So, Kyrie, while you were on the mend, we had to make a commercial. But don't worry, we studied your game, and we found someone who really matches your skills.
I am Kyrie Irving. I have speed from every angle. My handles cannot be handled. I ascend. Swish.
What do you think?
Welcome back to Ball Don't Lie here on Penn State Sports Night. Hunter Pitcoff, Matt Szczypiorski. Episode 44. We are one away from 45. Quite the milestone, I guess, if you will. And then the week after that is the final week of the semester, Matt. And it's going to kind of cap off this legacy that we have, right?
Yeah, I mean, man, we've gotten old, haven't we? I got to start getting the wheelchairs out because we've gotten so old. But, yeah, we're pretty washed up, but we're still kicking.
Yeah, we might have to have David Green on one of these podcasts too, for old time's sake. But you both might like tag team on me and talk about the Sixers, and it might get a little too much for me. I don't know. But start things off here now. Of course, unfortunately, not going to start off too much of a high note here. But in case you really haven't been paying attention to the news much, the Brooklyn Nets and the Minnesota Timberwolves canceled their game on Monday. It was scheduled for 8 p.m., but it got rescheduled to Tuesday. So the game was played yesterday. And the reason why was because of the death of Dante Wright from Brooklyn Center, which is just, I believe, 10 miles away from where the George Floyd killing was as well. He was shot by a police officer, Kim Potter, who also resigned from the Brooklyn Center Police Department, as well as their police chief, I believe, as well. Dante Wright was a 20-year-old man from Brooklyn Center, had a son who is turning, I believe, 2 years old in the coming days, and unfortunately lost his life after a traffic incident. They said that he wasn't cooperating or whatever that may be. He was supposed to be shot with a taser, but instead it was a bullet. And, rest in peace, Dante Wright and his family. I believe I actually saw something kind of interesting that George Floyd's girlfriend was actually a teacher of his when he was in high school, which is pretty cool. A little fun fact there. But anyways, though, looking at the basketball game, the players for both the Timberwolves and the Brooklyn Nets, they wore shirts that said, quote, "with liberty and justice for all." They also had a moment of silence pregame too. And even teams such as the Orlando Magic and the San Antonio Spurs 2 nights ago were locking arms pregame as well. So we've obviously seen throughout the course of however many years in the NBA, this is not a league that players and coaches and teams are afraid to take stands. They always do. It's unfortunate that they have to keep taking stands for things like this. But, talking about the NBA, Matt, we've talked about it before. How important do you think the platform is of these NBA players and people across the league to kind of voice these issues and express their feelings?
Oh, I think it's super important because I think, especially in this day and age where we have so many kids looking up to them, and they have such a big platform now, especially with social media and all that. So I think it's super, super important. It cannot be underestimated how important it is for them to continue to speak out about these issues, because in all honesty, it really didn't become that big of an issue until athletes started making, a big noise about it, and they've continued to have a great influence about it. And why this keeps happening, I don't know, especially with all the uproar that's been there in the last year. Especially in Minnesota with the George Floyd case, the trial still going on, and the fact that this happens again, it's unbelievable. And the fact, the only thing I'll say about the situation is that, if you can't tell the difference between a taser and a gun, then you probably shouldn't be a cop to begin with. But I in terms of the NBA, I think they did do the right thing in terms of canceling the game and then remaking it up yesterday. And they did do the right thing in terms of just the way everybody handled it and the pregame shirts. And they'll continue to do the right thing too.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point, Matt, that the city of Minneapolis and the Minneapolis area has just been affected so much. I believe it's been 2 killings within the last 10 or so months, and 2 very public ones. And then also Philando Castillo, I believe I'm saying that right. That was in 2016, I believe, when he got killed as well by officers. So this is a city that's unfortunately gone through a lot. There's been protests and even borderline riots going on in that city right now too. It's definitely really sad to see, and to see honestly just someone's life get taken when there wasn't a situation where I could have seen why he realistically could have happened. Is just it's a damn shame, Matt. It really is, and that's why as athletes, when you have this platform, you work your whole life to get to this situation. So the fact that you have some sort of popularity and influence, to not use that voice or anything like that. And it doesn't have to be athletes. You can be of any profession. You can be a lawyer or a doctor or anything like that. Or, maybe you're a celebrity of someone, of an actor or a singer, whatever. To not use that platform and to say that as a U.S. citizen, you're not allowed to express your rights and to use your resources. I don't understand what the argument is against that.
Neither do I. And, this goes back to the whole shut up and dribble thing a couple years ago with LeBron. He's really been the advocate. He was really the start of, we're not going to shut up and dribble. And athletes have really run with that, especially in the NBA, saying we're not going to shut up and dribble. We're not just going to be an athlete. We're going to be a U.S. citizen as well. And I think athletes across all sports, especially in the NBA and NFL, have been really vocal about it because their two sports are majority African American. And they've done a great job of, leading this charge against police brutality, which obviously started with Colin Kaepernick, and he's been, ridiculed for various reasons and has been essentially blackballed by the NFL. But, to get back to the point, it's just, it's unfortunate this keeps happening, but the athletes should continue to use their voice, as you said.
Yep, I couldn't agree with you anymore, Matt. But speaking of, our around the association here, we have a whole lot to talk about because a lot has been happening. We're going to start off with Mark Cuban with the Dallas Mavericks. He called the play-in tournament, quote, an enormous mistake. Now, in case people are wondering, now everyone knows about the play-in tournament, but a lot of people I don't think know exactly how it's going to quite literally play out. So the 7 and 8 seeds of both the East and the West are going to play each other, and the winner of that game gets the 7 seed in the playoffs. Then the 9 and 10 seeds play each other, and the loser of that game, it goes straight to the lottery. And then the winner of the 9-10 and the loser of the 7-8 play each other, and then that team is the one that gets the 8 seed, and the loser of that game goes into the lottery. So just to clarify that for the audience out there. But what do you think about Mark Cuban's comments? Also, players like Luka Doncic, Josh Hart, I believe, might have spoken out on it as well. A lot of players and GMs and even owners are not really agreeing with the play-in tournament. But what's your thoughts on it? Do you think that this is something that'll continue, or you think this is maybe just something just because of the pandemic?
I think it's something the NBA could experiment to continue with. I think the main issue that Mark Cuban had with it this year is the fact that, they're already squeezing 72 games into 4.5 months as it is, and to have, another play-in tournament before the playoffs even begin just to see who gets in, it just to him, I guess, seemed unnecessary. But I think that dude saw Steph Curry drop 40 against a playoff team and said this play-in tournament is some hoopla. He doesn't want to participate in that. He doesn't want to play Steph Curry, get bounced out. But I don't think the Mavericks will have any issue advancing into the playoffs. I think they'll probably win their first game. If they're, I'd assume they'd probably be either the 7 or 8 seed. I think they'll probably win that game and get straight into the playoffs. But I understand his resistance, but I do think it is something that the NBA will probably experiment with next year as well.
Yeah, I actually agree with Mark Cuban. I don't like the play-in tournament personally. Now, of course, like we always say, Matt, it's for the almighty dollar. This is why the NBA is doing this. I get also maybe COVID has something to do with it as well, but I really think that's the main reason why. And looking at this situation in particular, it almost just makes it seem like the regular season, I don't know, doesn't matter as much, or it matters. I don't really know. It's hard to explain, but I just feel like the Dallas Mavericks, who are 5 games over 500 right now, and then the Warriors, who are currently at the 10th spot, are not even 500. You're saying those teams are equal. The Mavericks have to prove themselves again, or whoever the 7, 8 seeds are. I just don't really agree with it either. I get where the skepticism comes from. I actually side with Mark Cuban on this one. I don't really like the idea of having the play-in tournament. I just think it's for money, but I don't blame the NBA for trying something either. But I generally don't agree with it.
I think the NBA saw an opportunity, especially with losing so much money due to COVID, and the fact that it was a shortened season, that they thought they could probably get away with this more than any other year if they wanted to propose it. And like you said, the almighty dollar, it's the obvious reason that they're doing this. That's pretty blatant. yeah, I don't think it would have worked in any other season if they wanted to try and pass this. But the fact that it's a shortened season, the fact that the pandemic, they've already lost a lot of money. Teams already lost a lot of money having no fans. Just starting to get fans back now, but at a lower capacity. I think this was their selling point to try to get to the play-in tournament because it would make the league more money. And as you said, it's all about the almighty dollar, and that's really the only reason they did it.
Yeah, I guess we'll see how it plays out, though. But we do get more basketball, so I guess that's good. But also some more unfortunate news involving the Denver Nuggets and Jamal Murray. It has been ruled that he did, in fact, tear his ACL on his left knee against the Golden State Warriors. Stars like Damian Lillard and Steph Curry took Twitter to kind of show him some love. He was having perhaps the best year of his career after having a slow start to the season and then really picking it up these last couple months. A lot of players have actually torn their ACL this year. Jonathan Isaac did in the bubble, but then Spencer Dinwiddie, who might be coming back somehow from it, and then Thomas Bryant of the Wizards, and then Markelle Fultz of the Orlando Magic. So I guess looking at the Nuggets here, Matt, how do you think this injury really affects them? Does it kill their chances at even making any sort of run in the playoffs?
It destroys their chances of making any run in the playoffs. I think they're probably gonna. I think they're at the 4 seed right now, 4 or 5 seed. I think they're gonna drop. They could potentially drop down, to 6, maybe even the play-in tournament type situation. Jokic is a great player, but I don't think he's enough to carry that team. Jamal Murray was, I think he was the X factor on the team because you know what you're gonna get from Jokic. But they really needed a guard to complement with Jokic, and Murray was the perfect complement for him. Not having that is really going to derail this team, especially post-trade deadline. I mean, they're pretty much set with their team. I think they're pretty much screwed.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame because they made so many moves at the deadline. I liked a lot of the moves they made, but like you said, there's 2 star players on this team, and you just lost one of them. And since it's post-deadline, and while the Nuggets are a deep team and guys will definitely step up and fill his role, it's not going to be the same. It just won't. Jamal Murray just brings a whole nother element to this team that the Nuggets just can't replicate like that. I just kind of wonder what it does for Nikola Jokic's MVP case, because right now it's looking like he's the front runner to win the award in a weird season that has had so many people kind of jockeying for that position. But do you think that this could be an opportunity for him to even solidify it, or do you think the opposite will happen and open up the door for someone else?
I think it's an opportunity for both, honestly. I think, if the Nuggets start to slip and he starts to slip without having Murray there, I think it derails his chances. But if he keeps the Nuggets where they are and he keeps balling out the way he is, then I think he's probably a lock for the award just to show how valuable he is to that team if they are able to keep afloat. But I have no idea. I mean, I really haven't seen them play without Jamal Murray very much because Jamal Murray has been one of the more consistently healthy players in the league over the past couple of years, and he's been in the lineup pretty much day in and day out. So it's going to be an adjustment for the Nuggets, and it's going to be an adjustment, to try and see what their identity is without him.
It's a great point. Like you said, Jamal Murray actually really does not miss many games at all. But speaking of some of the great point guards in the league, Steph Curry passed Wilt Chamberlain for most points in Warriors history. Now, Wilt Chamberlain did it when he was with the Philadelphia Warriors, Steph Curry with the Golden State Warriors. So a little bit different eras there. But Steph Curry had to score 53 points on 10 of 18 shooting from 3 in order to do it. Kendrick Perkins, though, brought up a really interesting point, saying that Steph Curry, could be considered a top 10 player all time when it's all said and done. First off, Matt, you can talk about maybe the significance of getting that all-time scoring record, and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green, Steve Kerr all showed the love. But do you agree with Kendrick Perkins? Do you think Steph Curry could crack that top 10, or maybe where does he land all time?
Well, first things first, if you've passed Wilt Chamberlain on any sort of list, you've done something pretty remarkable. So shout out to Steph Curry. It was just a matter of time. He deserves that recognition. But in terms of him being a top 10 player all time, I mean, that's honestly sounds like something I would have to sit down and figure out. I mean, there's a lot of obviously phenomenal players. I mean, I think the top 5 all time is pretty easy. That's pretty set in stone. Any order of LeBron, Jordan, Kobe, Shaq, Wilt Chamberlain even. I mean, there's just a lot of great players. And to say he's going to be, undoubtedly top 10 all time, that's a pretty good debate. You could probably have a pretty good debate with a lot of people, but everybody's top 10 is different. And, the modern NBA does tend to be, recency bias is a thing, and we tend to sort of forget about the players that came before this era. And Steph Curry, while he is a great player, he has the championships to back it up, and he has the accolades to back it up. He's got MVPs. He's had great playoff performances too. So, top 10 all time, maybe by the time his career is all said and done, maybe. But as of right now, still no.
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, right now, if he retired, I actually think he's the second best point guard of all time. The only one I take ahead of him is Magic Johnson, if I'm being honest. But so in that sense, that perhaps Steph Curry does have a chance to be top 10. Right now, I'd have to say no. I'd even say that he might not even counting LeBron. I'd still take Kevin Durant over him. I know some people would take Steph, but my argument is that, well, they were on the same team and KD was the best player. So that's why I'd say KD over Curry, at least for now. In my opinion, Steph would probably have to win one more finals, I think, to really be in that conversation. Whether it's with Golden State or not, we've thrown that idea out that he could leave. People think I'm wild for saying that, but if he's really someone who's looking to win, I'm not sure Golden State's the place unless they can really make some drastic moves. But yeah, it is interesting. I think he definitely could be top 20. So that's a good start. But I do think that Steph Curry has maybe a little bit more to do before we can really talk about top 10. But he also does have probably a good amount of years left because I think that he has a game that can last a long time. So what do you think about that, Matt?
I agree with that too. I think he'll stick around probably into his late 30s, maybe he's still playing when he's 40. Who knows? But he is older than I thought he was. I think he's 33, which is a lot older than I thought he was. He still seems very young because of his face. But he is. I mean, he does have a game that's going to last a while. I mean, the older he gets, I'd imagine he'd probably stay out of the paint a little bit more. And even if he later in his career, if he comes off the bench and he's a 3-point sniper still, I mean that's valuable in today's NBA. So I think he'd stick around for a while, like you said. And you'll just continue to rack up the points, rack up the accolades, continue to make all-star teams, and maybe like you said, like we talked about, maybe he ended up on a team other than Golden State who wins on a championship.
Yeah, I kind of wondered too, where Steph Curry finished all-time points list and assists and stuff like that. And we know he's gonna shatter the 3-point records, but I'm very curious to see where he finishes on those lists too. Because if he somehow gets top 5, then I think you can really actually start talking about him maybe in that top 10 conversation too. But speaking of some of the all-time greats, Kobe Bryant yesterday, Tuesday, marked the 5-year anniversary since his last game, the 60-point game against the Utah Jazz. Matt, do you kind of remember where you were watching that game?
It's actually funny, Hunter, because I saw something on Twitter yesterday that said, where were you when the Warriors won their 73rd game? And it was like, dude, we was watching Kobe, that, because they were playing at the exact same time. They were both on ESPN, but the Warriors on ESPN2, I believe, and Kobe's on ESPN. Everybody was watching Kobe, especially when you saw the stats he was putting up. I mean, I was watching Kobe for sure. I remember, just the final 2 minutes of that game. I've watched it on YouTube so many times. I watched it live, and I just, every time I see the final 2 minutes of that game, it's like, how does he do it, man? I mean, he's just the most clutch player, probably one of the most clutch players in NBA history, maybe even in sports of all time. And it's just incredible how he never shied away from the moment all the way until his very last game.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about somebody who quite literally left it all on the court. Now, don't get me wrong. Kobe got his shots up that game. I think he shot
he shot 50
I think it was 50-something shots he got up. But, I mean, especially at the end, ending in the most Kobe way. I remember Shaq going, go for 50, and he dropped 60. That just shows you the kind of heart he had and stuff like that. Yeah, I remember, too. I was in my room just watching it. I think my mom maybe popped in a couple times. Other than that, it was just me. I think it was on, a Wednesday or Thursday night or something. It was on a school night because I remember going to school the next day. So it was definitely not a whole event in that sense. But yeah, no, I remember too. It was definitely, quite a great moment to watch, especially given, that was my guy growing up. So to see him kind of go out on top definitely made, me, the Laker fan, happy. So that was cool.
Mm-hmm.
But let's also talk about Reggie Miller here. He brought up a really interesting quote. He said that I would have told MJ to go himself if he tried to recruit me to go to the Bulls. So looking at today's era now, it's very different. I think in the 90s when Reggie Miller and Michael Jordan played, and even the early 2000s, it was a lot more prideful in terms of wanting to do it yourself. But today's NBA, it's a lot more guys teaming up. building relationships, and kind of forming these super teams. So Matt, do you agree with Reggie Miller? And do you think that the NBA is maybe not heading in the right direction, or do you think this is just the way basketball is nowadays?
I think it's just the way basketball is nowadays. Ever since LeBron left Cleveland and Miami to go to Miami, and it's just the way it's been. People realize that you need multiple superstars to win a championship in today's NBA because everybody is so good. And Reggie Miller saying that that's just like the most '90s player thing ever to just say that. Like I feel like '90s players more than any other era are like the most prideful and the most butthurt about this super team era that we have going on right now because they're just. It's like, oh, we would have never done that in our era. Well, like you were also playing against some mailmen. Like you guys, like the competition was a lot different. Don't get me wrong, Reggie Miller was a great player, and the MJ Bulls were a great team. But I think there's a lot of teams that they would have had trouble with in today's NBA. And for him to say I would have told him to go F himself if he tried to recruit me. I mean, wow, Reggie, you're so tough. But like, dude, like it's just all about the era you grew up in. Like, there's no way you could tell. Like, if he played in today's era, there's no way he wouldn't be doing the same thing, too. There's no way.
I will say that I feel like this comment, I don't necessarily, like, knowing Reggie Miller, I don't think he's someone who's, like, salty about the way the NBA is particularly built today. Like, I don't see him as being, like, an old, screw you guys, like, kind of guy. But I think he was just keeping it real, just being like, hey, like, I'm going to be honest, if we were playing, if that same thing happened then, it wouldn't have happened, which I agree. I don't think it would have. It's just a very different era. Like you said, those 90s players are very prideful of what they did. And respectively so. It's just basketball is very different nowadays. People kind of forget about this, but this ability to, like, for guys, like, be friends and stuff like that, these guys have known each other, like, since the AAU days, in, like, middle school, high school. So a lot of these guys, like, grew up playing alongside each other. Basketball wasn't as, like, nationally together as it was back in the day. It was a lot more, like, regionalized. Like, you knew the people who lived near you and hooped near you, but that was about it. You didn't know the guy who played in, like, California and you lived in Texas. Like, it's not like that in the NBA anymore, especially with social media. All these guys know each other. They've played together since middle school, and that's why they build these super teams, because they're all, like, genuinely friends. So it's different. I understand the cons to it, but I agree with you, Matt. This is just how basketball is now.
Free agency, especially leaving in free agency, like, wasn't a thing in the NBA until, like, the late 90s, 2000s, man. I mean, obviously they had free agency, but it wasn't that widespread, and it wasn't, as big of a deal as it is today. It was mostly just, role players that were switching teams and stuff like that. But, I mean, it's just a different era. It's just, back then it was just you got drafted by a team and you stayed there forever pretty much unless you got traded or you left in later parts of your career. But Reggie Miller, I think, played his entire career with the Pacers. But yeah, I think Reggie Miller, like you said, is kind of that guy that's just like, I think his comparison nowadays would be like Damian Lillard. Like, Damian Lillard has been committed to Portland, even though, he could obviously go anywhere else. And, if he joined the Lakers, they'd be a legitimate, like, big three. I mean, they would be unstoppable. But he doesn't want to do that. He wants to make his own name, and he wants to do it his way. And I think Reggie Miller is kind of that same way.
Yeah, that's actually a good comp. Because Reggie Miller, and he did, Pacers had some great runs. They went to the NBA Finals in 2000. So, yeah, they definitely had some great teams there. And definitely, even Michael Jordan said in the documentary that the Pacers were always the biggest obstacle of winning championships. It wasn't even the teams they were playing in the finals. It was the Pacers. So there's always a mutual respect there. But in an area that doesn't really seem there's a whole lot of respect is Kevin Durant and Shannon Sharpe. This is definitely escalating quite a bit. KD recently tweeted a pic that Shannon Sharpe blocked him on Twitter and then said, quote, "but I'm sensitive." And then KD also said that Sharpe was responding to a misquote in which Kevin Durant said his rings were more valuable in his era and that LeBron isn't the GOAT because Kevin Durant beat him in the finals. And then Shannon Sharpe tweeted back to Kevin Durant basically saying he'd rather not handle it over social media and things like that. Matt, obviously, as basketball fans, we're just sitting here eating our popcorn, letting things unfold. But what do you think about this whole exchange, and do you think it's going to end anytime soon?
Man, just when you thought KD was done being that social media monster, he just has not slowed down these last couple of weeks. He's just going after people. And I think KD's just kind of gotten to the point where he's just like, F it, and just doing whatever the hell he wants to do. Which, I mean, if you're Kevin Durant, shout out to you, man. You can pretty much do whatever you want to do. He got fined for the Michael Rappaport situation, but it was like $50K, which is pocket change to him.
Yep.
So, In terms of this Shannon Sharp beef, it was really random. And if you're gonna, from Kevin Durant's perspective, you're gonna get, upset about what is said on those kind of shows, like debate shows with like Skip and Shannon and Max Kellerman and Stephen A. Smith. If you're gonna get upset about what they say on that type of show, I don't know what to tell you, man. I mean, they're literally just saying a bunch of crap just to get views up. That's like literally what their goal is just create fights and debates just to get their views up.
Literally, Skip Bayless has made an entire career ripping LeBron James. Like that is why he got that contract extension with Fox Sports. That was worth I think he was like the oldest person ever to get a contract that big or something like that.
Yeah.
I forgot the exact dollar amount. I think it was in like the multiple millions of dollars.
And yet with as much as Skip Bayless has said about LeBron, you've never heard LeBron say
he's never acknowledged him once.
Never say the name Skip Bayless, never once. And he won't give him the time of day. And here Kevin Durant is probably, just as talented as a basketball player and, not equal stardom, but up there with LeBron in stardom. And he just is so butthurt by everything. I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, I've said that, I think Kevin Durant's probably the second best player in the NBA. I think LeBron's one, I think KD's two. So, yeah, it just shows that these players do pay attention to the media no matter what. They know. They know when their name's sat out there. Now, people respond differently. There's people like LeBron who, for the most part, doesn't actually respond to most things, but we make a big deal when he actually does. Kawhi Leonard is someone who could not. He might be the one that doesn't actually get these memos. He might have no idea what's going on.
I wouldn't be surprised if Kawhi still had like a box TV, like not even a flat screen, just like a regular box with like the antenna sticking out. Like that's just so Kawhi Leonard.
You just watch like the Flintstones on there,
walking around in his New Balances. Like he doesn't give a damn.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, Kawhi Leonard, that's a whole nother beast. He probably drives like the car I drive, like a Captain 6 Ford Explorer. The door doesn't open. That's probably Kawhi drives too. But yeah, and guys like Giannis don't really say things like that. But Kevin Durant, that's just who he is. I guess he's sensitive, but most of these players, they know what's being said about them. Now it's just how they respond to it is just kind of what really is the big difference. But you're telling me Russell Westbrook has no idea about how Colin Cowherd basically calls him out on every single show? That's not 100%.
Yeah, you're telling me Russell Westbrook doesn't listen to this podcast and use it as his fuel to get triple doubles every night? Come on, man.
You saw that game winner. When he said that, he was thinking, ball don't lie.
Exactly.
That was what was rushing through his head. I'm telling you right now. But anyways, though, it's going to wrap up our round of the association. What is the motto of ball don't lie?
No team or player left behind.
Nope, not even Russell Westbrook. But we're going to move on to our players of the week here. Each give 3 picks. We don't tell each other ahead of time. Very rarely do we have the same player on a list. But, Matt, who is first for you?
So, I was just talking about Russell Westbrook. He's probably my number one enemy on this podcast. I'm going to say your number one enemy, Paul George. He has had 4 straight 30-point games, and he was a lock to be on this list despite Hunter's best wishes. During the Clippers' 6-game winning streak, George has been on a tear, averaging 30.5 points per game while shooting nearly 65% from 3. That's not a miscalculation. Hunter, would you like to give George some credit?
Paul George is a great talent. I've never said he wasn't. This guy was an MVP candidate and a first-team All-NBA player just a couple of years ago. Now, he's had some injuries that just held him back a little bit, and that's not really his fault. But I will say, I need to see more dog out of him. And I've seen a little more this year. He doesn't seem like he's getting as focused about what people are saying about him and things like that. He seems a little more locked in, which, is good. And he got his contract extension, got his money. Very talented player. I've never doubted that about Paul George. I love watching him as a basketball player. But I just don't want to, like Kevin Durant, I want to hear the whining. At least Kevin Durant has the rings to back it up and the legacy. Paul George still got to do some work, though. That's my issues with him.
Yeah, he does whine a lot. I'll give you that.
But next on my list is going to be a guy who actually is on the Indiana Pacers right now. And Karis LeVert, first off, give it up for him one time. Had cancer in his kidneys, but he's back on the court. And he has really found his groove with this Pacers team, averaging over 23 points per game, almost 4 assists, and 6 rebounds per game. Pacers have won 4 of their last 6 games as well after a team that was really struggling. Now they're starting to find their groove again. Seems like LeVert and Sabonis and Brogdon all playing really well alongside each other. If the Pacers are able to kind of figure it out a little bit, this could be a team that I'm not sure if it would advance in the playoffs, but could be a hard out because I do think they have talent. They were missing that, quite literally, that Victor Oladipo piece. And I'm not afraid to say it. I actually think Karis LeVert's better than Victor Oladipo.
I mean, that's bold. I think Oladipo is better defensively, but I think LeVert is probably better offensively. I think he has more of a capability of carrying a team offensively. And I think that's what LeVert's role might be with this Pacers team, the more comfortable he gets. And it certainly seems like he's been comfortable lately. He scored 60 points in the last 2 games. He actually was one of the reasons they kept the game with the Clippers close throughout that game until the Clippers kind of pulled away there in the fourth quarter last night. But LeVert, I mean, he's been balling out, man, and you can't give him enough respect for all that he's had to go through this year. Having that literally life-changing trade that's pretty much probably saved his life. And battling through cancer, and then not only battling through it, but then getting well enough to be in basketball shape again. Remarkable.
Yeah, shout out to Karis LeVert one time. Definitely has a unique story to him. Glad he's back on the basketball court doing what he loves. But Matt, who else is on your list here?
This one hurt, but Jason Tatum. During the Celtics' 4-game winning streak, hey, the Sixers swept the Celtics this year, so I'm not worried. But Tatum has gotten back to All-Star form and then some over the past week. He had a career high 53 points in their win against the Timberwolves, and had a clutch dagger 3 last night to preserve the Celtics win in Portland while dropping 32 points. All in all, Tatum averaged 34.5 points per game in his 4 games this week, all of which, as I mentioned earlier, were Boston victories. He's got them turning back in the right direction. I think they're the 5 seed as of today.
They are the 5 seed as of today, and I think outside of the top 3 teams being the Nets, Sixers, and the Bucks, it's going to be a whole lot of moving there because a lot of the teams are really bunched together. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. Yeah, I think people forget that Tatum had COVID, and he even admitted that he was having a hard time playing. He had a hard time breathing, didn't recover as well as maybe a lot of other people do from the virus. So I think that definitely had a big part in him, struggling to really get back into shape. But remember around this time, Matt, last year, Jason Tatum really hit his stride and really broke out. And perhaps we're going to see the same thing here again because he's an extremely talented player, a guy who's been All-NBA despite being so young. And the Celtics are, of course, going to need him more than anybody in order to cause any noise in the playoffs.
Yeah, they're really going to lean on him, especially with Jaylen Brown breaking out this year. I think Tatum is still the guy that is probably the X factor for that team. They're going to go as he goes, and the more he keeps playing well, the better that team is going to be, and the scarier of an out their team is going to be. Nobody is going to want to face a hot Celtics team and a hot Jason Tatum in the playoffs. And I'm glad you brought up the COVID point about him earlier because he did say either earlier today or yesterday that he has been using an inhaler before games, which is something he has never, ever had to do in his basketball career for any sport, probably. And, since COVID, he's been using an inhaler before games just to be, able to breathe.
Yeah, which is wild. It just kind of shows you that the virus can affect people that aren't, Jason Tatum is probably as healthy and as fit of a person as anyone in the country when you think about it. But, nevertheless, still being affected by it. And next on my list, though, is going to be, I don't know why I keep picking Thunder players, but Lou Dort. He has been awesome. Would you say like the
torture chamber?
Yeah, which
is the torture chamber, baby.
Great nickname. But Lou Dort, I mean, here are these numbers: 28.5 points per game, 2 assists, 6 rebounds, and 2.5 steals over the last week. That's like all-star caliber numbers here. Had a career high 42 points against the Jazz. They did lose that game, but considering the Thunder are trying not to win games, pretty impressive they almost won that one. But Lou Dort, we know what he brings defensively. We called him like the James Harden stopper, if you will. He is an athletic freak. He's basically like a linebacker playing in the NBA. Very unique player. I wasn't quite sure he would pan out in the NBA, but he seems like the Thunder kind of are able to find his role within that team. And he's got a lot of skill. I think he's one of those assets that actually is going to stay long-term for that team.
Yeah, I think he's probably somebody they'll build around despite him playing like he wants to get out of there. But he's just such a valuable young piece for them. He's a great defender, as we've noted, but the fact that his scoring has really increased exponentially this year, much more than it had even last year. Last year in the playoffs, you saw a little bit of his progression, but this year has been on another level. He's been playing really, really well defensively, and his offensive game has kind of followed suit this year. I mean, he's averaging 13 points per game this year, which is something, if you told me that last year, I would have been like, who? But he's been balling out.
Yeah, and Lou Dort was one of those young players that really broke out in the bubble and showed you what he was working on, someone who was definitely grinding despite being in the pandemic and is carried over into this year, like you said, Matt. But who rounds out the players of the week for you here?
So I have Zach LaVine, another man who scored 50 points this week. He had a 50-point game on Friday night against the Hawks and scored 39 of those points in the first half alone, yet the Bulls still lost by double digits, which is pretty impressive in my opinion, especially since they were playing the Hawks, who were like a playoff team, but they're not that great. Outside of that great performance, he averaged 24 points per game in the other 3 games he played this week, yet the Bulls only had 1 win to show for it in their 4-game road trip. Please give this man some help in Chicago. I know they got him some Nikola Vucevic in the trade deadline, but they need more help, man.
Yeah, hopefully that the Bulls are going to stay aggressive because we talked about it on this podcast. Like, we liked the Vucevic move. We thought it was fine to give up 2 first-round picks because they got to build around LaVine. And it seems like at least the Bulls are having that mindset, so that's good. But, yeah, they still need more help. This is not even close to being a completed roster yet. Yeah, LaVine's an absolute monster. It's so funny that they lost that game anyway. But last but not least on my list is going to be a guy who plays for the Atlanta Hawks, but not Trae Young. It's been the guy starting over him since Young is out. That's Brandon Goodwin. Now, a lot of people are probably like, who the blank is Brandon Goodwin? Well, I'll give you a little bit of a history lesson here. This is third year in the NBA, undrafted at Florida Gulf Coast. So, small town player. He originally was at UCF, but actually got kicked out of UCF because he stole a bike on campus. Then he transferred to Florida Gulf Coast. Yeah, he returned the bike, though. It did say the bike was returned. Maybe it was a miscommunication. I'm not quite sure. Those bikes can be a little confusing sometimes, I guess. But anyways, though, he transfers to the Florida Gulf Coast. He wins Atlantic Sun Player of the Year in his final year there. Also won Newcomer Player of the Year the first year he got there. Now he's in the NBA. And having a really nice run at it so far, averaging 17.5 points per game, 5.5 assists, and 5 rebounds, and he's averaging 37 minutes per game too. So despite the best player on the Hawks being out, Brandon Goodwin is making the most out of his opportunities, and shout out to him, okay? This is not a guy who I ever would have thought I'd put on my Player of the Week's list, and I dig deep in my bag. You know this, Matt. But I had to show him love while it's there. Shout out to Brandon Goodwin.
Yeah, it seems like he's really getting his opportunity now that they shipped Rajon Rondo to the Clippers. He's really getting his opportunity, and with Trae Young out, he's playing a lot more minutes. Obviously, I mean, he's not going to play 30-some minutes a night when Trae Young comes back, obviously. But just to prove that he could be potentially a great piece off the bench for them as a backup point guard to Trae Young, even if he's just getting 10 minutes a game. The fact that he's been able to keep this team afloat without their best player and really not miss a beat. They've had 2 pretty impressive wins against Charlotte and Toronto, both on the road with him in the starting lineup. So, Goodwin, I mean, if he's just going to carve out a role for himself in Atlanta, power to him.
Yeah, they actually did sign him last year to an extension, so he'll be there for a couple of years, potentially. So, yeah, I mean, he could be a nice piece behind Trae Young. We'll see. Anyways, though, we're going to talk about the Minnesota Timberwolves here. The reason why we are dedicating a whole time to the Timberwolves is because lots been happening with them. So, Alex Rodriguez, yes, that's right, A-Rod, the baseball player who Anthony Edwards did not know, and business partner Marc Lore both purchased the Timberwolves for $1.5 billion. This is one of the worst franchises in basketball, but that just shows you how much teams are coveting some of these top teams that are on sale. Glenn Taylor, who is historically known as one of the worst owners in NBA history, he is expected to run this franchise for another 2 more years until A-Rod Lore take over. Fun fact, he, being Glenn Taylor, purchased the Timberwolves for $90 million in 1994. So I think it's safe to say he definitely made a return his investment, Matt.
Absolutely, man. I mean, that's like 900 over $1 billion in revenue there. So good for him. I don't know if I did that math right. We're not math majors, but yeah, I mean, good for him. A-Rod, I mean, he was clearly trying to buy a baseball team, but couldn't buy the Mets. Failed on that. So I guess the Minnesota Timberwolves are the next best thing. But I don't know how much he knows about basketball. I don't know how much he knows about Minnesota either. But I do know that he raked against the Minnesota Twins in his career. So I don't know how Minnesotians. That sounds right?
Minnesotans.
Yeah, Minnesotians feel about Minnesotians feel about that, but. That's a hefty sum of investment. Maybe they'll have more salary cap to play with. Who knows?
Yeah, and I actually somehow found this story, and it's really interesting. So hear me out here. This is wild. So Karl-Anthony Towns, of course, the best player on the Timberwolves. He grew up in Piscataway, New Jersey. That is about, I think, like 50 miles away from the Bronx, which is, of course, where Yankee Stadium is. and he was a huge A-Rod fan growing up, big Yankees fan. So he bought a replica jersey at Walmart, and he said that it was his favorite jersey, and he still has it to this day. I doubt it fits him because he said he was just a kid, and he is 7 foot right now. So unless he was 7'13", which is unlikely, I guess he's just using it for safekeepings. But the funny thing is that, of course, now Alex Rodriguez owns the Timberwolves, and then the CEO of Walmart is Marc Lore. So you just can't make this stuff up. And of course, the J-Lo connection, and obviously Karl-Anthony Towns' mom passed away. Apparently her favorite artist was J-Lo. So this all comes full circle here, Matt. It's crazy how like these connections somehow bring things together. You just can't make this stuff up. The story just writes itself.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty crazy connection, especially in this year where Karl-Anthony Towns has lost so much. It's like a sign from his mom or something that all these coincidences keep happening. Especially since it's so random that A-Rod would buy the Minnesota Timberwolves. But I mean, it's a crazy story. And that's honestly like the kind of story like you love to hear, kind of journalism you love to see somebody digging deep in their bag to find that story.
Yeah, I also think it's wild that Anthony Edwards, who gives probably the best sound bites in the NBA, it seems like, has no idea who Alex Rodriguez is.
And it's crazy because he played baseball growing up. Like he listed early in the season to a reporter, he's like, "Oh, I was a pitcher. I was a shortstop at third base." And it's like, you're telling me you were one of the best players in your baseball team. You were a great shortstop and third baseman. You have no idea who A-Rod is? Come on, man.
Yeah, it's. I literally, one of my sister's friends is literally named after A-Rod. Like It's like Alex Rodriguez. It's pretty funny. But yeah, and then did you see the Twitter? No, I think it was an Instagram exchange. Alex Rodriguez put on his story like, "Happy to meet you. Glad that we get to work, Anthony Edwards." He's like, "Sup, nice to meet you, A-Rod."
Yeah, Anthony Edwards is like one of those people that just clearly does not give two craps about what anybody thinks. Like he's just gonna be him. He's gonna be a goofball. I like it, honestly.
Yeah, so do I. So speaking about Anthony Edwards here, I guess just a quick sub note. Who had dunk of the year? Was it Anthony Edwards or Miles Bridges, what we just saw recently?
I would say Bridges, just because of Eric Collins' reaction. I think his broadcast makes everything better. But in terms of dunk itself, man, I mean, I think Edwards got pretty up there, man. And in terms of Miles Bridges, you just kind of come to expect that from him, which I don't know if it helps him and hurts him in that case. But I think the Edwards dunk was really impressive, just because he's a rookie and just going at a center and clearly doesn't care. I think the Edwards one was better.
Yeah, I'm leaning toward Edwards just because like his head was like above the rim and he jumped over him. Bridges had a little more oomph behind it. I guess for me it's a preference thing. They're pretty equal. Both those dunks were filthy. But
disgusting.
Anyways, though, talking about Anthony Edwards, he's had a phenomenal rookie year. Not the most efficient player, I get it, but he's played really well and has improved every single month. Karl-Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell are playing more together now and having some success on the court. Those two guys were like this growing up. First two picks in the 2015 draft. A really young roster. Gerson Rosas is the GM of the team, president of basketball ops. Chris Finch now is the head coach, came from Toronto mid-season. They fired Ryan Saunders. How do you see this team kind of moving going forward? And do you think a change in ownership will lead to more success in Minnesota?
I have no idea. I mean, especially since, Taylor is going to still own the team for 2 more years. I don't know how much change we'll see while he's still there. I mean, short term, this team is booty cheeks. They're terrible. Karl-Anthony Towns is stuck there. D'Angelo Russell is injured all of the time. Anthony Edwards is exciting, but as you said, a little bit inefficient right now as a rookie. Haven't had any consistency in coaching either. I think long term, I think Karl-Anthony Towns will end up leaving Minnesota, whether it's via trade or free agency. I don't know what kind of contract he's on right now. I'd imagine he'll probably get paid at some point if he hasn't been already. But I think he's gone long term, and I think they'll probably try to rebuild once that new ownership comes in.
Yeah, it's hard to tell because I like a lot of pieces they have. Gerson Rosas seems like he has his head on his shoulders and a guy who really has a vision for this team. Their ownership has to get better because the fact that they spent $1.5 billion on this team means that they're invested. And I think A-Rod, given his athletic background, yes, he didn't play basketball, but he still was a professional athlete at the highest level. And I think having like that A-Rod swag there might convince people to come to Minnesota. I'm not sure. But they have a lot of talent there. Malik Beasley also, though, his story is a whole nother, can of worms. but like Anthony Edwards probably going to win Rookie of the Year. Really talented player. Karl-Anthony Towns, really talented player. Russell made an All-Star game before. Jaden McDaniels is low-key a really nice player on that team too. They got talent on that team. It's just, can they get the right mix of guys is the question. That's been their issue. But if they have a team that's willing to kind of commit and be a group and have some sort of consistency, I think things are going to get better. And like I said, Glenn Taylor was not a good owner. Kevin Garnett, I don't think, wouldn't even acknowledge the Timberwolves because of Glenn Taylor. So I think that this team could be heading in the right direction. I'm going to be a little bit more of an optimist here. Championship and stuff, I'm not going to throw that a lot of hoopla in there. But I think things are going to get better in Minnesota. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this roster on paper, and you look at it, and you're like, well, this is like a decent roster because, like you said, Karl-Anthony Towns is a solidified star. D'Angelo Russell is a great compliment to him. He's a guard that can score, is a good passer as well. They're obviously good friends. Anthony Edwards is a great rookie draft pick. He's going to win Rookie of the Year, like you said. And yet they still suck, and they've made pretty much no improvements of last year's team. They've gone nowhere, and it's just like at this point, like, what more do you want? Like, how many times are you going to run it back with this set of guys and just expect a different result at this point?
It's a really good point. You kind of wonder too. Towns is still a pretty young player, but again, his patience could be running thin. I'm not quite sure. But it's going to be interesting to see. I think that it's a positive that Lore and A-Rod are going to be buying this team. And I think that, good things could be to come in Minnesota. We'll see. It's been a while since they've been good. Hopefully they retired KG's jersey too, because he deserves that 100%. But let's look about the Clippers here, a team that is playing really well. Probably one of the more miserable franchises, generally speaking, but they have been very good as of recent. They are currently, like we talked about, on a 6-game win streak. That's the longest in the NBA. Paul George, like Matt talked about, has been on fire recently. And Kawhi Leonard, low-key, putting together a borderline MVP kind of season. Probably won't win it, but 26 points, 5 assists, a little over 6 rebounds, almost shooting 50, 40, 90 on the year, too. We obviously know what he brings on the defensive side of the ball. Has played a lot more games, too. Kawhi Leonard has been, chastised by all of us about not being durable, Mr. Load Management himself. But nevertheless, he's actually played a lot more, and Paul George has missed a lot of games. I just kind of want to know, Matt, I mean, do you think this is a team that can really contend for a championship this year?
I mean, I think depending on how LeBron and AD look and feel coming off of injury heading into the playoffs, don't look now, Hunter, but I think the Clippers may be the favorites in the West if they continue to play like this. Like I said, I don't think the Utah Jazz are going to be a good team come playoff time. I think they're frauds. The Lakers would probably be their toughest test, especially with Jamal Murray going down in Denver. The Phoenix Suns are a good team, but I think the Clippers match up really, really well with them, actually. I think Paul George and Devin Booker would be a nightmare for the Suns. I don't think the Suns have anybody good to guard Kawhi Leonard. I think Mikal Bridges is a good defender, but not Kawhi Leonard level. And I think the Clippers would probably be the favorites in the West if the Lakers don't have their feet underneath them.
Yeah, I think the biggest question with the Clippers is, are they going to, just shut up, and really just kind of get to it in the playoffs? Do they have enough dogs? And that's why I like the Rondo get, because Rondo's a dog. He's going to go after it. And he's a great passer. I think they needed a facilitator. That's why they were willing to give up Lou Williams, because he's a little bit more of a scorer. Rondo brings that intensity, that leadership, that vocal leader I think this team needs. So that's why I really like that get. But they did lose Harrell and then, Lou Williams, who was a 6-man of the year candidate multiple times with that team. Do you trust their role players more this year or last year?
I think, like you said, in terms of bringing up the Montrezl Harrell and Lou Williams, losing both those guys, I mean, honestly, I think I would trust their role players more last year. However, I think some role players have gotten a lot better this year, such as Luke Kennard, who struggled mightily to start the season, but has gotten his shot back as of late, which is his game. And also Terrence Mann has been lighting it up off the bench for the Clippers this season, especially recently, which is kind of an underrated guy. And as you said, Rondo was a great get. And, if they do play the Suns in the playoffs, the Rondo-Chris Paul rivalry is something to keep note of.
Yeah, we were talking about that. We want them to play again.
Exactly, dude. Rondo playing Chris Paul, man. I mean, he tries to beat Chris Paul when he plays against Chris Paul. And they do look kind of similar, which is crazy. But I will say I would trust I think the Clippers bench itself was better last year, but I think the team as a whole wasn't better last year. I think they're better now.
Yeah, I guess a big part of it too, let's not forget, is coaching. Ty Lue, of course, was on the bench last year, but it was Doc Rivers' team. Now it's Ty Lue's team. So he's definitely made some adjustments. It seems that Kawhi Leonard, he's kind of forcing him to play more. He's like, we're not doing this low management stuff anymore. You're gonna go out there and play. And of course, when Kawhi Leonard's on the court, you're more likely to win games. That's just kind of how it works when you have one of the best players in the league. But yeah, this team's interesting. I feel that the Lakers, if all things considered, are probably the favorites, but I don't know. I think I give the Suns a little bit more of a chance than you do, because I do think they have like that offensive firepower on that team. But I do think I don't know. I actually think the Suns match up fairly well. I mean, you got guys like not that they're gonna stop them, but Bridges and Jay Crowder and Cam Johnson on the wings. They're not gonna stop Kawhi Leonard or Paul George. Paul George might be his own worst defender, but and they're jamming there somewhere, Matt. But I actually think they match up fairly well against them. And then my question is too, like, how does Devin Booker play in the playoffs too? Because that's definitely gonna be a big indicator for that team.
Absolutely, and I think the presence of Chris Paul cannot be understated too. I just think as well as the Suns match up with the Clippers, I think the Clippers match up equally well with the Suns. I think I'll take the experience over anything any day of the week. Kawhi Leonard has the experience. Paul George, well, he has been pretty booty in the playoffs recently, has playoff experience, and Devin Booker has none of that. So I'm not gonna doubt Devin Booker's ability, but I would be surprised, to say the least, if the Suns do beat the Clippers in the playoffs.
Yeah, that'd be a great 2-3 matchup. You also kind of wonder, too, do the Clippers have any extra motivation given what happened last year, too, getting knocked out by the Denver Nuggets?
Listen, man, all I'll say is I think they'll have all the motivation they need once they see Rajon Rondo against Chris Paul.
Yeah, Chris Paul going up against his former team, too, potentially in the Clippers.
Mm-hmm.
Should be interesting. I definitely am rooting for that matchup. That'd be a lot of fun to watch. But let's talk about some of the coaches here, both good and bad. A little bit of a coach's corner segment, which we bring up every once in a while. Matt, is there kind of like an unsung hero here, a guy who's maybe not getting the credit he deserves?
I'm gonna go with James Borrego for the Hornets. I don't even know if that's how you say his name, but I'm gonna go with it.
It is.
Okay, cool. Obviously, his first 2 years with Charlotte were a struggle, but let's be real here. Those teams were pretty terrible, especially last year after Kemba left. This year, with more talent and the likes of Gordon Hayward, LaMelo Ball, and the utter electricity brought by the broadcast booth, Borrego has his team over 500 in the thick of a playoff race. Perhaps what's most impressive is what they have continued to do without LaMelo Ball and Gordon Hayward in the lineup due to injury, and that's just they've kept winning. Guys like Terry Rozier and Miles Bridges have really taken flight this year, and I think that's a credit to the coaching of Borrego.
Matt, of all the 30 coaches you could have picked, we picked the same one. Yep. I had James Borrego too, so I'll try to bring something different to the table, I guess. For one, Miles Bridges, he almost made that Player of the Week's list. I saw he was averaging over 20 a game over the last week, so he has been awesome. PJ Washington, I've always been a big fan of him. He's a really good player, and it's been by committee. This team, I think, is better defensively than people think. James Borrego is a Greg Popovich, branch off. Was with the Spurs. He was a big reason why Tony Parker was really able to break out. So having that guy next to LaMelo Ball definitely helps a lot, because LaMelo Ball is a super talented player, just like Tony Parker. Let's not forget, Tony Parker, low-key one of the best point guards in NBA history. He had a great career with the Spurs, was an awesome player, and was really kind of like the best player on that team later in the years when Tim Duncan and Manu were getting older. But, yeah, I think Borrego's a great coach. He's great with developing young talent. And I think the Hornets, they got their franchise player in LaMelo. They got another great player in Gordon Hayward. This is a team that I think people got to watch out for. They're going to make the playoffs this year. We'll see if they have to do the play-in tournament or not. But Borrego, while not a Coach of the Year candidate, has done a great job with that team. And I'm glad that the Hornets gave him the time of day. Also, I believe the first Mexican of descent player or Mexican descent coach in NBA history, too. Just a little fun fact there also.
That's pretty cool. I mean, he's definitely done a great job there. He seems like a really good players coach. He's got them playing great defensively, and the fact that he's been able to keep this team not only afloat but winning games without their two best players, debatably. I mean that alone is really impressive to me. He's got them in the thick of the playoff race. They were a 4 or 5 seed as of yesterday. Obviously, they got jumped by Boston and a couple other teams there to either a 7 seed now, but I mean, he deserves all the credit in the world.
All right, Matt. So let's talk about a coach who's maybe, kind of get on the hot seat a little bit, sizzling a little bit, sitting down. Do we have the same guy on the list? Who did you say?
I have Luke Walton.
God. Yep. So did I.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll start. So when are teams going to figure out that this guy can't coach?
Thank you.
Sure, he was an assistant with the great Warriors teams of 2015 and 2016, but did he really have to do anything with that team? Let's be honest.
That team was winning games no matter what.
Yeah. Since becoming a head coach, he has been nothing but a headache for these franchises. He held back the Lakers from growing, as I'm sure you saw firsthand, even when he was handed the literal best player of the generation, LeBron James. He was promptly fired there, only to go where careers go to die in Sacramento, and it has been more of the same. He had a spat with Buddy Hield last year en route to not even making it to the bubble. And this year has been more of the same despite having an all-star caliber point guard and quite frankly a roster good enough to at the very least compete for the play-in tournament. Instead, he's probably going to get fired and should get fired.
I kind of wonder, given Sean Miller getting fired from Arizona, Luke Walton, an alumni, he might get the Arizona job. I wouldn't be shocked at all. I remember rumblings were coming out when Sean Miller, all the scandals came out that Luke Walton was going to take that job. And, Bill Walton is a Conference of Champions, whispering in their ear to take him. Not them saying that that'd be the best hire, but I could see that happening and him leaving the Kings this year. I agree. This team, they were on a streak where they won, I think, 7 of 9. They've been on multiple winning streaks, but they're currently on a 7-game losing streak. This team's been so up and down. De'Aaron Fox, who's been low-key one of the best players in basketball this year. He's averaging like 25 points per game. He's starting to become one of the best players stuck in no man's land in the NBA now. They got talent there. They have the Marvin Bagley issues too about him not wanting to play there, and they can't figure out his role no matter who's coaching that team. Yeah, that's why Luke Walton's on my list. I think he's done this year.
Yeah, I don't even think he deserved the Sacramento job to begin with. I mean, especially after the Lakers job. I was shocked the Kings went that direction, especially for such a young team that it seemed like was trending in the right direction, and they're going to bring him down by hiring Luke Walton. I mean, he's just never been impressive to me as a player and as a coach. So I just was confused by the hire, and it's really not paid dividends for them at all. I think if he's not out this year, something wrong is going on.
Yeah, and my thing, too, now, look, the Lakers, obviously, from the year Luke Walton was there to the championship year, their roster got a lot better. They got Anthony Davis. They got guys. But seeing, like, Rondo having a better season, Alex Caruso having a better season, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope having a better season, these were guys, JaVale McGee, guys who were already on the roster, having better seasons, significantly better seasons, having more defined roles under Frank Vogel than Luke Walton. Now, I don't think Frank Vogel gets the respect he deserves. I understand he got great players, but I do think he's a very good head coach, and LeBron, Anthony Davis, and everyone has nothing but good things to say about him. But Luke Walton, I feel like people wanted him to be a good coach because he was able to hold the ship with the Golden State Warriors when Kerr was out for a while, and respectively so. They got off to, like, I think the most wins at the start of the year in NBA history. But, yeah, that ship has gone and sailed. The Luke Walton whole Golden State Warriors thing, he's had 2 coaching jobs. Has not done good with either team.
And it's not like he hasn't had talent. You can't say he hasn't had talent. He's had boatloads of talent, young talent, old talent, average talent. He's had everything. And, he's had freaking LeBron James, and he hasn't been able to do anything. Granted, LeBron was hurt for a little bit that year, but even when he came back, that team was booty butt buns. Yeah. So you just got to get him out of there, man. I mean, he doesn't deserve another job.
Yeah, bikini bottom. That's how they were. But I will say, though, that to this day, I've been saying that they should have never fired Mike Malone in Sacramento. That was stupid. Look how good he is with the Denver Nuggets. Just saying. I know that's a throwback. But anyways, though, for our all-NBA list, we're going to be throwing it back a little bit. We know how much that basketball and hip-hop are synonymous with each other. They go hand in hand for the culture. So we're going to be for the culture here, too. We're going to be giving our all-NBA rap lyrics teams. I would say rappers want to be athletes. Athletes want to be rappers. But we're going to, kind of merge the two together here and see which some of the best bars in rap history, referring to NBA players and things like that. Matt, I'll let you go first. What do you got?
Hunter, I will say this is probably more up your alley than mine. I'm more of a country music fan myself, but the rap, that's definitely more your game. But I tried to participate, and I think I did pretty decent. So I'm going to start off with probably one that you're probably going to think is obvious. I'm going to be Drake, Thank Me Now. In all honesty, we both could have probably done a top 5 in this category with just Drake songs because that man has an NBA reference in like every song of his. But this song had the best one in my opinion. Drake says, and that's around the time that you idols became your rivals. You make friends with Mike, but gotta AI him for your survival, which is just lyrical genius in my opinion. The references to when Allen Iverson went right at Michael Jordan as a young rookie and crossed him up pretty badly and nailed a shot in his face. The play itself has become super famous. See it on House of Highlights like once a month. But the play and the lyric are super cool. I wish I had that kind of genius.
Yeah, people don't want to give Drake the credit he is as a writer because of the ghostwriting rumors, but that is a great line that he had also on my list because that one like instantly stuck to my mind. I will say too, a little bit further in depth, if you really read into the lyrics, because at the time this is off Drake's first album, Thank Me Later, and so in this album when he's saying like he is Allen Iverson in this bar, and all the OGs are Michael Jordan, so he's saying that he's with his idols, he's with the top of the people and his come up, but then he's Allen Iverson, and now you're in the way, so I have to cross you up and get a bucket on you because now you're competition. So it's a little more insight into that bar right there. Anyways, though, next on my list is going to be from the song Encore off the Black album, Jay-Z. This is one that also has a whole lot of layers to it. So basically it goes, when I come back like Jordan, wearing the 4-5, ain't to play games at you, it's to aim at you. So for a basketball reference here, Michael Jordan, when he came back from retirement, originally did not wear 23. He wore 45. And so when Jay-Z saying, when I come back, because the Black album, he was going to retire. So Jay-Z was like, I'm retiring after this. But just like, Michael Jordan, we all knew he was going to come back. It wasn't a surprise. But so when he says, when I come back wearing the 4-5, ain't to play games, Jude, to aim at you. So, of course, Michael Jordan coming back, wanting for blood and stuff like that. Jay-Z the same way. But when you're wearing a 4-5, he's talking about the 745, which is a gun. So he's like, aim at you with the gun? Yeah, that's some mind-blowing stuff right there. Jay-Z, who apparently does not write any of his lyrics. All of it's off the top. This is probably one of the best bars that Jay-Z's ever had. Encore is probably one of my favorite Jay-Z songs, too.
Yeah, Hunter, that was also on my list, and I will say you could have, you described that hell of a lot better than I could have ever. The 45 being a gun did not catch on to that. Like I said, I'm very out of my element here, but that was pretty cool. The only thing I'll say is that song, Encore, is a fire song. It's an absolute slapper clapper and deserves to be recognized as such. And it has an elite mashup with Numb by Linkin Park. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. That's more my speed, but I thought that was pretty. That's the only thing I'll add to that because everything you said I was going to say, and you said it much better. So.
Matt, I would do a country one, but I don't think they're going to be shouting out NBA players on it anytime soon. So, might want to stick away from that. Some of those country artists don't really like black people very much. So.
Yeah. So I think really the only NBA player that I know that likes country is like Jimmy Butler.
Jimmy Butler,
he's a weirdo goofball, but
yeah. So those. Cleveland Brown side, Jadeveon Clowney. Just saw that.
Oh,
wow. But anyways, that was sticking to the NBA here. I guess what's next on your list, Matt?
White Iverson by Post Malone. This song slaps so unequivocally hard. I've probably listened to it no less than 300 times. His best lyrics in the song, though, in terms of Allen Iverson, who is the obvious reference in this song, the quote goes, "I'm the answer, never question, lace them up, learn a lesson," which is an homage to AI's nickname, The Answer. The only line I don't like is when he says, "I need that money like the ring I never won," because it hurts that Iverson doesn't have a ring because the front office in Philadelphia couldn't give him a supporting cast to save their lives. But great song, great references to Allen Iverson. Obviously, it hits home for me because I am a Philly sports fan, so I love that song, and I love the reference, and I love Post Malone, too.
Yep. Also, too, with Allen Iverson, you talk about someone who really merged the gap between, like, hip-hop and basketball and the way he dressed, the way he conducted himself and things like that. Allen Iverson has always been the people's champ. Everyone just can't help but love Allen Iverson. And he was someone who definitely brought that swag to the NBA and changed the dress code and changed the culture of basketball. Everyone growing up wanted to be like AI. So, shout out to AI one
AI
time.
was just cool, man. He didn't lift weights because those drums were too heavy. That's just awesome.
Next on my list is going to be another guy who definitely changed the culture and gets referenced in hip-hop all the time. That's Kobe Bryant. So this next one isn't necessarily a lyric. It's the entire song Kobe Bryant by Lil Wayne. Basically how the song came about, Lil Wayne's a big Lakers fan, And it came off after the 2008 NBA Finals when the Lakers lost to the Boston Celtics. And Lil Wayne goes, I want to make a song about you. Is that okay? And Kobe goes, go ahead. And that's still, I think I know every single word to that song. It's pretty funny because when you listen to it back, there's a line, it's like going for his 4th ring like it was his first. And then he ended up winning 2 more. So now he has 5 rings. Lil Wayne at the BET Awards also did a little bit of a remix to that song, to honor Kobe as well, and then rewrote kind of the song a little bit. But yeah, that's definitely was always one of my favorite songs. Kobe, of course, my favorite, basketball player, favorite athlete of all time. Lil Wayne, one of my favorite rappers. So it was nice seeing, both of them at the height of their careers too. Oh wait, Lil Wayne was a problem. So was Kobe coming off an MVP season. So both those guys, it was a perfect match, I guess.
Yeah, dude, late 2000 Lil Wayne, man. When I was 10 years old, I wasn't supposed to be listening to him. Mama Szczypiorski did not like Lil Wayne, but I liked Lil Wayne. I thought he was so cool, and his lyrics were awesome. He's always had great references, great rhyming technique, which is really a great art. And I think Lil Wayne has been awesome ever since he's first started rapping. He's continued to make great music, even though he doesn't put out as much, obviously, now as he did back then. But late 2000s Lil Wayne, 2008 Lil Wayne, like you said, he was a problem.
Yeah, you talk about a guy who was just putting out music. Lil Wayne is probably the best at ever doing that. Anyways, though, Matt, who else is on the list for you here?
So I got 50 Cent, probably 50 Cent, that's probably how you say that, and Follow Me Gangster. So I'm going to be honest, this is a song that I had not heard before today, but the lyric is really funny to me. 50 Cent says, my team in the cut, packing metal things. I've got more foreign shooters than the Sacramento Kings. And that made me chuckle to myself because it's fun to laugh at the Kings' misery. But then I realized it really didn't have anything to do with their misery because I looked more into it. And the song was released in 2003 when the team was actually good. And it also made the lyric not only funny, but it made it a good metaphor too. So that 2003 Kings team had Vlade Divac, Peja Stojakovic, Hito Turkoglu, and Darius Songala, which is obviously a lot of foreign white players. Pretty smart lyric.
Yeah, obviously 50 Cent was not, again, it was one of those like, double metaphors there because, of course, he was referring to drugs. But, using the Sacramento Kings line, very slick with it. Fitty, always for New York, always for the culture. Very underrated business mind, too. Has some great shows. If you ever not seen the show Power, go check it out. And I feel like 50 Cent's role in sports is more so trolling Floyd Mayweather more than anything else. But
and throwing terrible first pitches.
Yeah, he one of the worst first pitches in baseball history with the New York Mets. I'm not sure he ever picked up a baseball before. That's still so funny. But yeah, I'm glad you brought that one up. I did not have that on my list, so I'm glad you brought it up.
Quick question: was 50 Cent the one that challenged somebody to read one page of a Harry Potter book instead
that
of
was
doing
Floyd Mayweather? Yep.
Yeah, instead of doing the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge.
Yep.
That's a funny clip. I can't say what he said, but it was pretty funny.
Yeah, yep, that was him. Him and Floyd Mayweather, they go way back. A little off topic here, but this is just a funny story. So, when the whole Jake Paul Logan Paul Floyd Mayweather fight was coming out, there was rumors that like 50 Cent was gonna fight Floyd Mayweather. He goes, "No, I wouldn't fight him. He's too small." He's like, he can fight me once he learns how to read.
Which is so funny to me. Like, dude, you're gonna call him out like that? Oh man, that's good.
50 Cent's a big dude. He's built.
Hasn't he been shot like 7 times?
Yeah, that's why he has like a little bit of like a lispish when he speaks because he got shot in the jaw. So yeah, 50 Cent's a bad dude. But he's awesome. So shout out 50 Cent. Great follow on social media if you don't. Anyways, though, next on my list is going to be another Drake lyric because, of course, Matt, like we said, we could have had an all Drake lyrics here, but I had to bring up one more because it's definitely one of my favorite lyrics. There's a little bit of a negative backstory behind it. So I believe it was 2011, 2012 when this song came out. It's Stay Schemin', which is a Rick Ross song with Drake and French Montana in it, but Drake's kind of the one who has the most notable verse on it. He basically talked about how Kobe and Vanessa Bryant were going through a divorce at that time. And then he basically said, you wasn't with me shooting in the gym. And then LeBron also retweeted that. And then Vanessa and LeBron got into it and had beef. So, a Drake song just stemming beef, I guess, that came out of nowhere. It was a great line because Drake goes like, "You wasn't with me shooting in the gym," and then Rick Ross goes, "You wasn't with me shooting in the gym." So like it's great. I love how they kind of mesh together like that. But that's definitely something that gets me motivated. If I was ever in a mood and just felt like posting something to Instagram, that might be the caption.
Dude, I'm so lost right now. But I didn't know half of this, John. I mean, I didn't know Vanessa and Brian and Kobe Bryant were ever getting divorced. I'm assuming that's when Kobe got the rape charge. Was it around that time or no?
No, it was a little bit after. They were just kind of going through it. They obviously did not get divorced.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was kind of made public. And
Obviously, I didn't know the LeBron part. That came out of nowhere.
LeBron,
It seemed like Kobe and LeBron were pretty good friends.
Yeah, it was a weird situation.
Yeah.
It's settled now though, which is good. But yeah, it's definitely a weird one. A rap song starting bigger beef.
Okay.
Oops.
Yeah, I have one more on my list. How many more do you have?
I also have one more, so
All right,
go
cool.
ahead.
I guess I'll start with mine. So I might completely butcher this, but I think his name is Fife Dog. Steve Berko, Stir It Up. That's the song. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
Yeah,
Again, another song
Yep.
that this is another song that I've honestly never heard before today. But it was one of my favorite quotes I saw when trying to come up with this list. The lyrics go, "Hip hop scholars, since being knee high to a duck, the height of Muggsy Bogues, a complexion of a hockey puck." I'm not even really sure what that means, but if I were to guess, he's taking a shot at his height. But I thought that was pretty funny. I thought that was. I've never heard the song, never even heard of this guy. But any Muggsy Bogues joke, I'm gonna laugh at. So I enjoyed that.
Well, first off, rest in power to Fife Dog. DMX too, of course, we lost him recently. But yeah, Fife Dog is part of A Tribe Called Quest, which is a pretty famous New York rap group. Again, I'm from there, I'm a little more familiar with them. But they're from like the 90s though, so it's back in the day. Yeah, I understand you wouldn't know that. I'm a little bit more of a hip hop mogul, if you will. You stay in your lane with the country music, but it's all good. Anyways, though, but yeah, that's a pretty clever line. Fife Dog also very short. I believe he's also about 5'3". So it's okay. They're poking fun at each other. Nothing personal. Two short guys, getting along. But yeah, it's a slick line, like you said. We talked about Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Allen Iverson, but Muggsy Bogues reference made it in there too, so that's good.
Yeah, pretty cool. I mean, I like the line too. The knee high to a duck. So, and rhyming it with hockey puck was pretty funny. So shout out to him.
Yeah, that's definitely some 90s rhymes right there. I don't think that'd cut it today. But anyways, though, last but not least on my list, another rapper who always brings up NBA players. In fact, there were rumors he was even going to play for the Pistons. That's J. Cole. Of course, he was a hooper too. Actually, almost walked on to St. John's when he went to school there. So, but he has a couple of really good ones. But I had to pick out one. It's from the song "Sideline Stories" off of his first album. It's definitely one of my favorite ones. It gets you thinking a little bit. So it's like, you never play me like LeBron versus Jordan. 20 years from now, who they could say was more important? Both changed the game, came through and made a lane. Who's to say who's greater? Nah, we know they ain't the same. So basically saying, like LeBron James and Michael Jordan, both two different eras. And I think in this reference, J. Cole's kind of referring to himself as LeBron. And then Michael Jordan is kind of more of like, the people who were doing it before him. So he's basically saying like, even we're both great at what we do. Why do we got to be compared against each other and pit against each other when in reality, we're both great at what we do? And can't we just both be appreciated for who we are? So that's some pretty deep stuff from J. Cole there too.
Yeah, that's pretty good, man. Again, never heard that song before in my life.
That's
But it is a pretty cool comparison. I think, especially the way I'm going to look at it, especially after Kobe Bryant's death, it was like, why are we even arguing about this anymore? Let's just appreciate greatness. And I think that could be another way to look at what he said to J. Cole's lyric. Just kind of, appreciating both LeBron and Jordan, regardless of what era they played in. They're both amazing basketball players. And, if he's comparing his rap to 90s rap, then, again, two very different things, but two very great things. So you don't need to compare it, just enjoy it.
Yeah, J. Cole's always been someone too trying to merge the gap, and someone who's always been involved with the NBA too. Very close with Dennis Smith Jr. since they're from Fayetteville, North Carolina. So I don't know if you remember when Dennis Smith Jr. did a dunk contest, jumped over J. Cole. I believe he also performed at a halftime show too in the All-Star game a couple of years back when it was in Charlotte, which is of course North Carolina. So Yeah, J. Cole's always been super involved with basketball and things like that too. Everyone in I think the NBA community loves some J. Cole also, including myself. So yeah, that's gonna round out my list here, Matt.
Yeah. All right. So one last thing, NBA wise, Sixers play the Nets tonight. ESPN 7:00. Sixers are wearing their cool jerseys with the Liberty Bell on them, so I think they're gonna win. Hunter, how are you feeling about tonight?
How do I feel about tonight? I mean, like, I think it's more about you. You're asking me who I think's gonna win.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with the Sixers because they're healthy. I think Kyrie and Harden both might be out.
Kyrie probably won't play because of the Minnesota shootings. I would imagine he probably.
Yeah.
won't
Also, I think he it's Ramadan right now. And he's actually converted to Islam. Is what I've been told. So he's fasting. Yeah, Kyrie be on some spiritual stuff there. I know.
Yeah, all it says on the injury report is personal reasons. So
yeah, I think that's why. But maybe the Minnesota thing has something to do with it too. I'm not quite sure. Of course, Kyrie, give him the man credit where it's due. He's always been an activist and part of the community and quite literally putting his money where his mouth is. But we always focus on the crazy stuff he does, which is understandable. But Kyrie's always been a man of the people too in that sense. And has always helped out in ways like that too. He almost quit basketball to help out. So, not a lot of people would have done that. But anyways, though, I'll pick the Sixers, Matt, to make you happy. And that'll be my educated guess anyway. That's going to wrap it up here for Ball Don't Lie. Episode 45 next week. I don't know. We might have to get David Green on the podcast. I don't know if he's listening right now, but, one of the OGs of the podcast too. Maybe have to make that happen. We'll see. Have him, guest appearance, one more time before the year ends. But anyways, though, thank you all for watching. Thank you all for the support, and we'll catch you next week.
See ya.
Thank you for watching this edition of Penn State Sports Night. If you're a fan of our content, please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more clips. Also, follow us on Twitter at PSSN TV and on Instagram at PSU Sports Night to keep up with all the action. For all my colleagues, we are Penn State Sports Night.